Welcome to a new era of Tradeswork at the Mile High Sports Studios inside the beautiful number 38 here in the River North neighborhood of Denver. I am your host, John Ekstrom. It is nice to see you instead of just hearing you. And I am joined by the Rocky Mountain MCA president, Randy Drennen. Randy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, that's right. It's weird having you thank me, given that you were in charge of this organization.
That's fair, but I'm going to thank you all the same.
But I suppose I'm your host, so why not? And then our guest today is Nate Lundy. Nate is the CEO and president of Mile High Sports. As you can tell from behind us, this is his space. He was goodly enough to partner with us on this. And Nate, we're happy to have you.
Well, thank you guys. I was just saying before we started recording this episode that I love the fact that I get to be a guest as opposed to being the host. So thank you for having me. It's fun to not have to be the one that prepares everything.
Directing traffic.
I just have to sit back and enjoy myself. So thanks for having me. I appreciate it being here.
Well, perfect. So let's get started with you. Tell us, just because this show is Tradeswork, it is focused on the skilled trades. When I say skilled trades, what does that mean to you? What comes to mind? What do you think about when we say skilled trades?
I think of a couple of things. First and foremost, when I was born, my dad was a carpenter. And so I think about a lot of the work that he did before he chose to go back to school and became a civil engineer, became a professor of civil engineering. But when I was younger, the whole reason, so I was born in Nebraska, I moved to Oregon. The whole reason that we moved to Oregon when I was about 3 years old is because there was a ton of construction being done in Oregon. They were having a little bit of a population boom at the time. And so there was a ton of work for him to be able to get. And that's actually part of how we wound up in Oregon. My parents had some friends that had moved from Nebraska to Oregon in part for graduate school, and basically had reached out to my parents and said, man, there's a ton of work here. And so in addition to, what he had already been doing in terms of helping to build houses and all of this, he helped build hospitals. He did a lot of that. So the first thing that comes to mind is actually my dad. In terms of the work that he did before he went back to school. But then I also recognize when I hear the skilled trades, it is 100% something that I did not inherit from my dad, which is why I rely so much on it. My wife is much more the handy woman than I am. She loves doing those kinds of things. But that's what I think of is these incredible men and women that have skills that I don't have.
Right. I think something very similar, because if there is something to be done in my own house, my wife is much more handy than I am.
100%.
So she's like changed her
I've
own
been
oil.
kicked out of the house before. Like, why don't you go hit some golf balls? And when you come back, I'll have this done.
Right. Eye rolls for gender roles.
Yes.
That's what I like to say, which I think is a pretty good summation. You mentioned building hospitals. And I think, Randy, what's interesting is our trades intersect so much with other trades. He mentioned carpentry, but when you're talking about hospitals, you need plumbers, not just for restrooms and things like that, but med gas systems.
Sure.
Can you elaborate on things like that?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, not only plumbers, but pipe fitters.
Absolutely.
That's, obviously near and dear to our heart. But we do really well in that space because our guys do amazing quality work. And where better do you want really high quality work than in a hospital, right? When lives are on the line. So what I particularly love about your story, Nate, is that you have a firsthand appreciation for skilled trades through your own personal history and background and your dad's work and everything else, because I think the folks that don't know about skilled trades or don't appreciate it through firsthand experience, knowledge, things like that, it's a little bit foreign to them. And so when you have that, you get this group of advocates, I would say, for the industry that aren't in the industry. So they're, industry adjacent, I guess, if you will, and huge supporters of the trades, which I think, because we have so many vacancies, because we have so many opportunities and so many openings for these people to come into the workforce as we move forward, folks like you and telling your kind of story really is important to understanding how we broaden support for the trades as a whole, let alone just plumbers and pipe fitters. But
Absolutely.
To your point, hospitals, some of the bigger facilities, our guys specialize in commercial work in particular. And so, that is absolutely right in our sweet spot there.
Well, absolutely. And on our list will be number 38, because here we are in look at this a space this size that has so much going on with live music and so many taps and a kitchen. a studio here. There's so many different types of people doing so many different types of jobs that this place I think will be fascinating to talk about. Nate, so you mentioned Oregon. I want to run down this resume a little bit here.
It takes a while. I got to be honest with you.
A little bit. So you bought Mile High Sports in 2017.
Yes.
But before that, you had stops in a variety of roles in a variety of mediums. I've seen television. I've seen radio. I've seen online podcasts, internet. You did a turn with video games.
I did.
And you've been Denver, Orlando, San Antonio, Charleston, Memphis, and of course, Oregon. So you've been a part of a lot of teams.
Yes.
We just talked about the importance of teams. What to you are the qualities of the best teams, the teams that work the best, that get the most done?
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think that a lot of it starts with some of the leadership and then the people that are in there. I have a very simple philosophy of how I have done my entire career once I got to the point where I was a manager or an executive. And that is I surround myself with people that are more talented than I am and then get out of their way. Yeah. I'm a big believer in that. So I think that when you talk about successful teams, and I've even worked as a member of teams where I felt this way about the support that I had from a management standpoint, and that is an understanding that teams need a leader, teams need a head coach. But at the same time, if you are too hands-on, if you are too much in the weeds, you are actually preventing people from actually reaching their full potential and their success.
Certainly.
I'm a believer that if you have to operate that way, then you probably don't have the right people on your team, right? Because you are having to be far too hands-on instead of being able to say, hey, these guys, these ladies, they know what they're doing. Let me allow them to be very good at what they're doing. So I think that is part of it. And then it's kind of funny to say this because obviously I have spent the majority of my career in some form or fashion of communication. But I've worked in the communication business and had people that weren't good at communicating. So I think that I think when I think about teams, that is also part of it because, like you mentioned, my time that I spent with EA Sports, with the video game company. EA Sports to me is a fascinating operation. And to this day, it is one of my favorite stops along my career because you are surrounded by graphics artists, you are surrounded by computer programmers, you are surrounded by people that are in charge of creating the storyline to games, to the marketing people, it truly was a stop along my career where the idea of a team was incredibly important because an artistic person, someone that is just a master at artwork, is not someone that can sit down and program how to make that artwork come out of the screen.
Right.
And vice versa. Someone that understands how to program a game or how they want a certain physics engine to function within, for example, Madden, the NFL game. This person might say, I know exactly how to program this, but I need someone else to tell me what it's going to look like. And so I loved that about my time there was because you saw not only these incredible talents, but why it was so important for them to be able to communicate amongst themselves because person A can't do what person B can and vice versa. And they have to make sure they're talking.
Absolutely. Right. Randy, you know what that reminds me of? It reminds me of our members are really proud. And this came up in early episodes of this show again and again and again was the Denver Art Museum. Because the Denver Art Museum has all those crazy angles. And how are you going to put pipes behind that wall? Right. You have this vision for how you want the art museum to look, but you still have to make it livable, inhabitable for people. And so that type of thing was just very evocative to me. What you said, I think really applies to the work that we do.
Yeah, no, I think, there's certainly a portion of it that is skill and that is repeatable. And that is, kind of the day-to-day, whatever you want to call
it,
the bread and butter of the
work
industry. But then there's that segment of the work that is almost more part art than skill or more part, artistic than
more art than science.
Than science or traditional construction.
Sure.
And so I look at it every day. I think there's a lot of examples of this in people's offices and things like that guys have just built in the shop sort of in their free time. these really artistic creations made out of pipe and sheet metal and things like that, and valves that are just. There was a place in Fort Collins, you might remember this place called Sweatsville Zoo, where they had just taken pieces of iron and created these amazing sculptures from parts and pieces, and really being able to kind of do what you said, Nate, about how do you take the things that need to happen and pull it all together and really turn it into this finished product that, to your point, is either imperceptible because it's hiding behind this really funky shaped wall and nobody even knows it's there, or it's the centerpiece of the design, right? And we've got different applications that kind of fall into that category too with some of the projects that our guys do. So
I think that's well stated. And Nate, I want to come back to something. You like to surround yourself with people who you say are smarter and better and more skilled,
which is not difficult, by the way.
I was just about to say, when your bar's low like mine.
Yes, exactly. I'm telling you, it makes it a lot easier.
You two have black belts in humility, so congratulations on that. But I want to touch on something that I've had the privilege of. When you came in to Rocky Mountain MCA, you sent out a questionnaire to each of your board members. This was the longest questionnaire I've ever seen from someone like yourself.
Wow. Okay.
Because Randy is asking things like, what is your favorite movie? What is your favorite style of music? Just to get to know these people. And why did you go through such an extensive process when you came on board to Rocky Mountain MCA?
So minor correction of that. I didn't send it to my board. I sent it to my staff.
My mistake.
But it was all the same idea, right? Because I was basically inheriting a team. And also building a team because we had to fill some positions, but I wanted to know my team. So it's one thing when you get to do the research, and we'll use the sports analogy since we're in this lovely facility, but when you get to do all the background before you draft that pick and bring them to your team, you've already done all your due diligence and you know the answers to all those questions. When you are the new hire and the new coach who's inheriting a team, you don't have that background, right? So, and I didn't want to just keep it to work stuff. I want to understand the person behind the title, the person behind the desk. So I want to get to know what makes them tick. And I want to be able to also appreciate them at that level. So, when it comes time to, reward them or do gifting around the holidays, things like that, I want it to be personal. I want it to be something that's meaningful. Like I don't want to phone it in. And that's just that's just me.
Yeah.
But that's really what drives that level of kind of trying to appreciate the person more than just the position.
Nate, you know what this reminds me of? Someone you admire very, very deeply. The coach you probably admire most deeply.
Correct.
Greg Popovich.
Yes.
Who his track record is unparalleled. And you said something to me about how he could get in a player's face, chew them out, and afterward they would come to him and almost say thank you.
Yes.
And so this approach that Randy has feels very sort of, you can hear echoes of it in the way Popovich works and functions.
Yeah, 100%, because he had the ability to, his job as a coach, just like any of us that lead a business or anything like that, is to try to get the best out of the players. And there's times when the criticism, the critique of the work, not necessarily the person, but the work is necessary in order to get that person to elevate their output. And, John and I have talked about Coach Pop quite a bit. I am a big fan of Pop. I have a lot of respect for him. I worked with him directly when I spent some time in San Antonio, so I know him personally. I just have an immense amount of respect for his ability as a leader. And, I've said many times, if he had chosen a completely different field from basketball, he still would have been successful. He's just wired that way. He is an incredible leader. He happened to choose basketball as his vocation, and he found success. But I am convinced, because of who he is as a person at his core, it wouldn't have mattered what profession he chose. He would have found success because it's just in his DNA.
Sure. Sure. I think that makes a lot of sense.
I think he would have been able to do the same if he had been leading the project that built this studio.
Right.
He would have been able to communicate with the guys that were welding it. He would have been able to communicate with the guys that were doing the fabrication of this studio that we're sitting in the same sort of success. I'm convinced of that.
Well, I mean, this certainly speaks to the approach of surrounding yourself with people who are smarter than you. How do you evoke the best out of them? How do you get the maximum amount of ability out of someone that you work with?
Recognizing, and I'll go back to what Randy just said about trying to get to know the folks that were on the staff when you came in. Everyone has different skills. Everyone has a different skill set. And so one, you need to make sure you understand what they're good at. And at the same time, what they're not good at. I think you have to understand that about everyone to be able to know how to get the best out of them, because ultimately you're trying to accomplish something, whatever that goal is, whether it is a building, whether it is us doing a new issue of the magazine, whatever it is, there is an end goal. There is a finish line.
An NBA championship, God forbid.
Precisely. Yeah. There is a finish line.
Right.
And because you're doing it with a team, you have to figure out where everyone's skills are in terms of how to help you get to that finish line. Right. If we're doing an issue of the magazine that is focused on football, I love my guys that do the work for me for the Nuggets and the Avalanche and the Rockies, but they're not going to be a part of that magazine because that's not their skill set. That's not their specialty. They're amazing writers, but it's not their specialty. So obviously when we're doing a football issue, we're going to focus in on the guys that understand football. And I think that the vocation side of it, and I talk about the stuff with EA and the time that I spent there, I think that's part of it, John, is getting the best out of them, is understanding everybody's strengths and weaknesses so that what you can do as a leader is amplify each of those traits and minimize the ones where people have weaknesses. Anybody that works for me will tell you I have a terrible brain when it comes to my calendar. I forget things oh shoot, I got to get that done by 2:00 today. Right. That's something that I know about myself. I've tried to get myself a few little skills here and there to help myself out. But it's a weakness that I know that I have. You got to be able to acknowledge that, and you have to be able to talk to your team and have them be receptive if you are talking to them about their weaknesses.
Right. One of the things, Randy, I want to pivot just briefly because I think that's really smart. And we're talking about jobs in sports media. Randy, one of the things we've talked about on this show quite a bit is the stigma surrounding the jobs and skilled trades. And one of the things that we try and do is dispel those with some reality about what this work is actually like. And I think we've done a pretty successful job so far, wouldn't you?
I would think so. I mean, it's certainly, Mike Rowe used to say that there's this war on work, right? That's being fought on a number of fronts. And in Hollywood, I think he's mentioned, and in the media in general, he's mentioned that is certainly one of those fronts where, the way that the folks that work in the trades that we are particularly associated with, the plumbers and the pipe fitters and things like that, the way that they get portrayed in TV shows and movies and things like that does very, very little to help us erase that stigma. Right. So it's knowing firsthand. It's what Nate talked about. It's knowing people who have worked in those trades and know that they don't look like the guys on the screen. It's knowing the people who have worked in those trades and know that they make a very successful living. And they're not living in a van down by the river. It's things like that. Right. So, but that's a harder message to communicate when it's not the thing that's on the big screen, or it's not the thing that's on the television that's in your face all the time. But yeah, I think that's right. I think we have done a really good job of talking about the quality of life that these kinds of careers can provide, the salaries that these kinds of careers can provide, and frankly, the reward that comes with building something with your hands, which not everybody gets to appreciate. When you create something, and I would put you solidly in the category of being a creator, Nate, whether it's a magazine or something else, right? There is an immense amount of satisfaction that comes from looking back and seeing what you've created, whether that's an issue of a magazine, whether that's a podcast, whether that's a video, whatever that may be, or it's a building, it's a hospital, it's a school, it's, all of these things that are really, really applicable in our day to day. I think there's a ton of satisfaction that comes from that. And unfortunately, there's a lot of careers out there where you don't get to experience that. And I think that leaves you sort of longing for something that's missing, and maybe you don't even identify it. But for our guys, they have that.
You're seeking deeper fulfillment. And the reason I bring that up is because that's been a theme on this show quite a bit. Nate, I would suspect you have the opposite problem because a job in sports media is very, very sexy, right? The idea of it is, oh man, if I just got paid to watch the Broncos and write about them, that sounds awesome. I'm a huge Broncos fan, right? So what my question to you is, what would you tell people who are considering a job in sports media about the realities of the work here?
Run! No, I'm sorry. That's I
gut reaction.
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind the fact that my son decided to pick a different field. Trust me. No, I think that the biggest thing is it isn't all glamorous and sexy. There are moments that are,
sure,
without question, there are. And those moments are fun. But there's an immense amount of work that goes on to prepare for those kinds of moments, right? I was having a conversation with someone the other day, like as we sit here recording today's show on, July 24th.
Right.
I had somebody say, oh, football season's coming. You're going to be really busy. And I said, oh, no. Like once the season starts, we're on autopilot, man. It's all the work right now. It's all the preparation. It's getting ready for the season. It's getting ready to go to training camp in the next 24 hours. It's those kinds of things require an immense amount of work. And then if you have the right people around you, then by the time we get to kickoff, things operate very smoothly. As long as you've done the preparation work for it. So I think that, someone that has an interest in any media, sports or otherwise, I will tell you that there are moments that are a ton of fun.
Yeah.
There really are. There are the moments when, we turn the microphones off, we turn the cameras off, and we go, man, that was a good show. That was fun. There's also some times where I'm like, oh man, that was not good. And then there's also moments of, I've interviewed some of the biggest athletes on the planet. I've had those moments. And those are rewarding. Those are some moments where you go, all right, all the stuff we went through to get here was worth it. And so I think that the media has that part to it in terms of someone that is interested in the field. And I think the other one that I think applies to all of our jobs here, all three of us, is an immense amount of flexibility. I mean, I started in radio when I was 16. I edited commercials on a reel-to-reel machine with a razor blade and grease pencils and things like that. Wow. Like that's how we edited things when I started. I can now do that on here, right?
Yeah.
And so what I'm doing is still the same. The technology and the how has changed.
I think as long
as you're flexible, you can make that work.
I was absolutely thinking, the way that, we've always been welding pipe together, but the way that our guys are doing it now has changed dramatically. And the technology will continue to improve, and evolve the game.
And I think less and less is happening on the job site.
Yep.
Where you're doing all that prep, like in a, temperature controlled, much more friendly environment than battling the elements and battling, the sounds of traffic and things like that. You can prep all that and then just go to the job site. And it's like you said, when the season starts, you just do it.
Totally agree with that. I want to circle back. Just a personal curiosity was something that Nate said. So I'm wondering, from my perspective, do you ever in your role miss the ability to just step back from the level and the way that you're involved in some of these events that transpire and wish you could just be a fan again? So I think about the idea of missing a Super Bowl party that I get to watch with my boys.
Right.
And you look at the Super Bowl in a very different way. I'm sure your Super Bowl Sunday is very different than mine.
A lot of it is. I would tell you two things. One, yes, there are some times when it would be nice to just be able to step back and be like the other 73,000 people at the football stadium, right? Or just like, the millions of people that are sitting on their couch at home. I will say this though, in terms of myself, and I'm different than several people that work in my industry. We're all different, but I will tell you this. I have said this for decades. I am a fan first and a host second. I have the opportunity, if I want to attend a Broncos game sitting in the press box. I choose not to. I choose to sit in the stands and be a fan and have a beer in my hand. And, sometimes not say the nicest words to referees, things like that. But what is to your point, Randy, I am, however, while I'm at the game, I am checking Mile High Sports' social media accounts. I'm looking at what my guys are doing during the game. And so there is always a part of me that still has my foot on the job.
Yeah.
Even when, my wife and I are there at the game, like I said, with a beer in hand, and we're cheering and we're high-fiving complete strangers, when good things happen.
Yeah.
But I can't completely let it go. And so you're right. There is a moment where, I wonder, wouldn't it be nice to just sit back and not, and that is a very different approach that I have to take when it comes to being a fan.
So circling around that a little bit and tying it into our industry, then, do you think you could do the work that you do if you were not a fan first and you were
I don't think
disinterested?
I don't think I'd have the same passion for it. No, I think that it's part of what has allowed me to be successful is because I find a lot of personal joy in being able to talk about the teams that I care about or the sport that I care about. I don't know that I could do it if I wasn't passionate about it at all.
I think you just described my role in my industry.
Sure.
Because I can't do the things that my members do. I can't go to a hospital and put in those gas lines or put in those water lines. But I am such a huge fan of the work that they do and the trades, and they're just salt of the earth people. It's such a good group of people to represent that it makes it easy for me. And I don't think I could if I didn't feel this way, the way you just described, makes it easy for me to go advocate for that group of people at the Capitol or with lawmakers or with other policymakers and rule makers when it comes to fighting for them as a group, for them as an industry, for them as individual companies, things like that. And so I agree with you wholeheartedly. You can't do that kind of work if you're not a fan of it first. And then just happen to be lucky enough to work in it.
And I'm obviously differently from what you're talking about. I also sometimes have the struggle because, let's face it, not every story that happens in sports is good news.
Sure.
True.
And those are things we have to talk about.
Sure.
And it's part of the job, and it's not fun to do that part of it. But as a whole, to John knows I'm a country music fan. So to quote Luke Bryan, I believe most people are good. And so, sometimes there are some bad eggs, but that's true in life. That's not just true in my industry or anybody else's industry. It's just, that's life. Right. And that is one of the challenges. Like you asked me about something with somebody that's interested in sports media. I think one of the other things that I would tell someone is understand that it's not all sunshine and roses.
Sure.
It's not all like, oh yay, I got to interview, Peyton Manning yesterday. I mean, that's fun. Peyton's funny.
Sure.
But it's no picnic writing about the Rockies right now, I imagine.
No, it is a challenge. It is a challenge because, Drew Kreisman, who is our lead Rockies writer and host.
Terrific, by the way.
Drew is fantastic. Drew is a big fan of this team. He wants them to be good, but right now they're not.
Yeah.
And that's a struggle for him. And it's a struggle for my friend Drew Goodman, who is the television play-by-play, to continue to have some energy and excitement around this team when he knows it's a challenge. He knows it's a challenge, but he loves these guys and he wants these kids to succeed. Absolutely. 10,000% he does.
That brings me to, we need to wrap up here shortly. And I want to ask this question, and I'll lead with my own.
All right.
So, Nate, you have had a prime seat for some of the greatest athletes, teams, sports moments. And so I want to come to you. I'm going to lead with my own since we're talking about the Rockies, and I'd like to get a little bit of positivity to the Rockies right now.
Boy.
My favorite live moment was Game 3, Rocktober, 2007. It is raining. It is cold. It is terrible. It's a lousy, lousy night. Yorvit Torrealba has like an 11-pitch at bat and belts one into the left field stands to put the Rockies in the lead. They ended up winning that game. It was one of my favorite moments I have ever seen live sports. Nate, what's one of yours?
Oh man. So my problem is, and I I have a really hard time narrowing it down to one, but I'm going to pick.
You can pick one.
It
doesn't have to be the one.
Yeah, I'm going to pick one, and I'm going to go back to my time in San Antonio, and covering the Spurs. So when I was living in San Antonio, I was there for 3 of the 5 championships, and I ran WAI, which was the flagship radio station for the Spurs. So we carried the games. We did that's part of why I had the interaction that I had with Popovich.
Sure.
So I'm in what was then called the AT&T Center in San Antonio for Game 7 against the Pistons. And the Spurs are losing going into the 4th quarter. And a buddy of mine we were all sitting together. We were up top. So I told you, I'm not in the press box. I'm not sitting, like, I am up in the upper level of the arena like everybody else. And a good friend of mine was sitting a couple of seats down from me, with a group of about 6 of us that were there together. And he is sitting down and he's like this. He's got his head buried because he's like, this is terrible.
He's tortured.
They're losing going into the 4th quarter. And Tim Duncan basically said, hold my beer and watch this. And he kind of had,
as he would do.
He had moments that Jokic has had, and we've all seen here locally, and those are fun. And Tim Duncan and that team had one of those moments, and they came back and they won. And they won the championship. And I remember just the roller coaster of emotion, but the just unbelievable high as the clock was ticking down, and we recognized that they were going to pull it off, and that they were going to win that year. And I think that one of the reasons that one stands out to me so much is because he had 12 minutes to go in the game, and one of my best friends has his head buried in his hands because he's convinced that they're going to lose, and then you fast forward about an hour and a half, and we are on the San Antonio Riverwalk toasting beers partying it up with a couple 100,000 of our closest friends that had all descended upon downtown San Antonio and the Riverwalk to be able to celebrate. So that one stands out to me because of the true 180 that happened over the course of about 30 to 35 minutes.
Sure. Oh, that's a good one.
As opposed to like going into a game where you're kind of dominating and you're like sometimes there's that moment, like a light switch that you remember. And that's it for me.
That's a good one. Randy, what about yours?
I have 2 memories that really stand out. One's personal and really it's sports related, but not so much the game. I was in college, and as a fundraiser for our fraternity, we would do security for events.
Okay.
And show up and put on the jackets and put on the hat, and I never saw the money. They would write the check to wherever they wrote the check, but I was told we were fundraising.
Good.
And we were doing security for the Jacksonville Jaguars playoff game here in Denver when Denver was expected to win the Super Bowl, should have won the Super Bowl, and I think it was first round
is this Mark Brunell?
This is Mark Brunell.
Oh, no, I remember that game. Oh, geez.
My post for that game was outside of the press box on that inner ring. I think it was the old Mile High, if I'm not mistaken. And Sal Palantonio was in my press box.
Oh, cool.
And Sal Pal, I was born in Philly, so I'm a Philly guy. But Sal Pal was like, hey, man, you want to come in and watch the game? Like, this is silly. You can't even see the field. And I said, sure. And he said, take the jacket off, like hide the jacket.
Nice.
I got to sit in the press box next to Sal Palantonio and watch the whole game. And then about 15 minutes before the game was over, they said, everybody report to the field. We got to keep everybody off the field. So then I was on the field when the clock ran down to 0, and it was pandemonium because people couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. But that was just, he was such a decent guy. That was just a personal highlight.
That sounds cool.
But the sports moment I think that sticks out to me is a little more obscure. It was being at CSU when they beat Arizona, and that wasn't a home game, but they beat Desert Storm defense and Teddy Bruschi and all those guys. And that was not supposed to happen. I think Arizona was like a top 5 team, and CSU's campus lost their mind. And being a part of that, which you kind of described on the Riverwalk, but just being around the energy and the electricity that came with that victory that sort of put Sonny Lubick on the map for years to come, really. I mean, that's really what elevated their program into being a consistent bowl contender. They were expected to be in a bowl at that point every time. So, but that was kind of like the first time that CSU's program really ever elevated to being part of the national conversation.
Was that Moses Moreno era, or was he later?
That would have been really, really close. Now you're putting me on the spot, but it would have been really close.
Yeah.
certainly pre Bradley Van Pelt, but it was,
Certainly.
I think it was,
I was up there for Bradley Van Pelt. That
Yeah,
was
there you
my
go.
era. So the helmet spike for CU.
Helmet spike.
Oh, you
See?
CU fans, tough break.
Yeah.
You've had plenty of times for revenge though. Well, Nate, this has been an absolute pleasure. We end with this question to everyone.
Okay.
When Nate Lundy was a little kid, what did he want to be when he grew up?
A marine biologist.
A marine biologist.
Again, you're talking about a kid that grew up in Oregon.
Oh,
I'm
sure,
I
yeah.
could
born in Nebraska.
I
next
could
to
get
the
from
beach.
yep. I grew up in Oregon. I could get from my house to feet in the sand on the Oregon coast in roughly an hour.
Oh, okay,
Wow.
great.
And so that was a very common, sort of, vacation getaway for my family was we would just go to the coast. And so I was always fascinated by that. And I was convinced that I wanted to be somebody that was working with marine biology, but I've always been of the belief that every child seems to go through at least part of a phase where they want to be a marine biologist. Everybody just wants to hang out with the whales
Sure.
and do the cool stuff. So that was childhood me would have said that.
That's a good answer. That's one of the better ones I think we've had, Randy.
Yeah, I like that one. I don't think anybody's ever said marine
I don't think
biologist.
anyone said marine biologist either,
Yeah.
but we are in Colorado.
Yeah.
So that
Yeah, it makes it
something
a little tougher.
something of a
I was
limiting
gonna say, it's
factor.
a little harder when you're landlocked. Yeah.
So thank you, Nate, for being here very much.
Absolutely. Thank you
And
for having me.
Thank you all for joining us. Randy, thank you.
Thank you.
We'll be here at the top of each month at number 38 in the Mile High Sports Studios. So we're proud to feature and discuss the women and men building our communities, building our skylines, and building our future. See you next time.